LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
But I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Your favorite local grocery stores like Kroger, Ralph's, Fred Meyer, and more are now delivering on Uber Eats. Get 40% off your order of fresh, quality ingredients. Whether you just got home to an empty fridge or suddenly got a craving to whip up something new, you can get everything you need delivered in as little as 25 minutes. Get 40% off your order with code Kroger2026. Plus, members get $0 delivery fees. Order now on Uber Eats. Orders of $30 or more save up to $25. Ends 4/30/26. See app for details.
I am Nicole Khalil, and you're listening to the This Is Woman's Work podcast. We're together. We're redefining what it means, what it looks and feels like to be doing women's work in the world today. Sometimes that work looks like building companies, raising humans, or leading teams. And sometimes that work looks like realizing you physically, mentally, and emotionally cannot be bothered with other people's bullshit anymore. And I, for one, love when the work looks just like that. I mean, the older I get, the fewer fucks I have to give, which might be my favorite thing about aging. If losing your tolerance for bullshit is part of the deal, and neuroscience apparently says that it is, well, then sign me up. Because somewhere along the way, usually midlife, something shifts. We stop cushioning our words. We stop pretending not to notice what's staring us right in the face. We stop managing everyone else's feelings like it's our unpaid side hustle. And suddenly, people start asking, "Are you okay?" You're damn straight I am. I'm just done worrying about you and everyone else's crap. We're told that this means we're getting bitter, difficult, batshit crazy, but that doesn't jive with the research. Confidence, for example, tells a very different story. Women's confidence actually increases with age, surpassing men's for the first time in our 60s, which is why I fully plan to throw an absolute banger for my 60th birthday to celebrate my extreme confidence and having zero fucks left. People will call me crazy, and I will not care. And it's not just confidence. There's actual neuroscience behind this shift. So imagine my delight when I came across an article called Aging Out of Fucks that explained this change not as a phase, but as biology. Not anecdote, neuroscience. I read it and immediately thought I have to talk about this on the show. So that's what we're doing. Our guest today is Ellen Scherr, a licensed clinical therapist who helps women over 40 rebuild their lives when the old version stops fitting. Through her Substack community, Life Branches, she writes honest, cutting, deeply validating reflections on midlife, identity, divorce, anger, ambition, and the grief and relief that come with outgrowing your own life. She creates space for women to stop performing strength and start telling truth about aging, about becoming, and about what happens when your brain quite literally runs out of the chemicals required to give a damn about what other people think. Ellen, clearly I could not be more excited about this conversation. So let's start here. When women hit this point where they just can't pretend anymore, what's actually happening in the brain and why does it feel so sudden?
So what happens is the neuroscience behind it, Nicole, is that women, we start to lose our estrogen, which everyone knows. But what we don't realize is the impact that has on so many different factors in our brain. And so in one of my posts, you'll see I made a comment that estrogen's like the popular girl at the party. And when she leaves, everyone leaves. Okay. And everyone does leave. I mean, like at least 5 major neurochemical systems in our brain that help us to function. So whether that is maintaining anger, anxiety, people pleasing, whatever it might be, all of those chemicals are on its way out. And so we're never really taught to understand that these are actually biological functions that we have no control over. We can pay attention to them, but we don't have control over them. But nobody ever talks about it. And so that's why I decided to write this post of we get to a certain point and the estrogen that was kind of keeping us together as quote women starts to disappear. So all of a sudden we go like, yeah, I don't think I want to be pleasing everybody anymore. Yeah, they'll go to Target in my pajamas. I don't give a shit.
Which I absolutely love, by the way. But so I guess it explains what's happening. But what does estrogen do in our younger years? Is it about social pleasing and conformity? Is it about community and collaboration? What is it that it is having us do in our early years when we have more estrogen that's like kind of going away?
So when we're younger, that estrogen kind of keeps us encapsulated in a little bubble in a way. And so all the conditioning and all the things we're taught as women from a child early on are all kind of protected by this estrogen. Now, some of us have more people pleasing than others. Some people don't have it at all. So again, a lot of it's, upbringing, life experiences, personality. But when you start to strip away, think about like stripping away an onion. When you start to strip off some of those layers, now some other things start to happen. And as women, we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with me? So it's funny, I had a client a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I've been working with her for a while. And she said, Ellen, I need anxiety medication. And I said, well, tell me what's going on. And she proceeded to name like 5 different things. And I said, "No, that's not anxiety, that's perimenopause." And so a lot of us just aren't aware of all the different changes we really go through. It's getting better, but back when I was going through it, doctors just kind of poo-pooed it. Nobody really talked about it. It's like, yeah, it's part of life, deal with it. But we're becoming more educated as women as to really what's going on, not only in our bodies, but in our brain as well.
Yeah, it is getting better, and I'm about to turn 50, and I will tell you that I feel like most of my symptoms were dismissed or just sort of like, yeah, that's part of the deal. And I really didn't make that connection between more of the mood or behavior or feeling side of it, like the weight gain. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I didn't equate it to giving less fucks, right? So as this is happening, I think a lot of us worry that we're becoming depressed or anxious or bitter or difficult or too much or fill in the blank. What are your thoughts and why is it important to reframe this shift as it's happening?
So what I'm recommending that women do is they take a look at where their life is currently. We all go through a certain point in our life where we're like, I don't know if I want to do this job anymore. I don't know if I like this anymore or whatever. We start to reevaluate all these things, probably because we're getting older and we know now we're going towards the second half, so we're paying more attention to it. So most of it is understanding what you're going through and using your thoughts to control what you're going through. And so what I mean by that is we all have what's called cognitive distortions. And those are primary ways that all of us think unhealthy, dysfunctional, whatever word you want to use. But by controlling those cognitive distortions, we can control some of the behavior and some of the things that are going on with us at that time. And it's not just for this time of life, but it particularly helps women during this time. It's just the hormones are just like roller coaster up and down.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to manage that for yourself, much less other people around you. So you have to start being conscious of what those thoughts are, whether it's negative thinking, it's doing the what ifs and trying to project into the future. regretting from at the past, whatever it might be, you need to start to work on reframing those thoughts for a new chapter in your life. And we know it can be done because scientists uncovered that our brain is neuroplastic. What that means is those automatic connections, let's say people pleasing connections, they can be undone. It's just a matter of using your thoughts and training your thoughts to undo some of that. We just reach a point in our life when I think we just say, I'm done. I'm tired of just saying yes all the time.
Hmm. So I clearly am very excited about heading in this direction of stepping further and further away from people pleasing and from everybody else's opinions and from caring about things that I don't actually care about. Seems to me like there's a lot of upside, but I think that there is always upside and downside in every stage and every phase and everything that we do. So let's talk first about all this emotional labor we have and continue to do as women, the reading the room, the managing the reactions, the softening the truths, the people pleasing, the paying attention, the nurturing, all this stuff. What is the cost over our lifetime, and why does that start to break down midlife?
I think age, we just get tired of it along with all the other biological changes. But it's difficult when we're in our 20s and 30s. So it's not so easy when you're in the workforce to, as a young woman, to open your mouth around the table and say, yeah, I don't think I really agree with that. So we're kind of conditioned not only from childhood, but just even culturally, especially in the workforce, to just be agreeable and go along with everything. Then we get older, we get more experience. Now, like I said, some of those hormones are changing, some of that estrogen is reducing. And so now you get to the point where you're like, I don't care anymore. I've got an opinion. And I'm going to say it whatever it costs me. But women are so conditioned to be afraid to open their mouth that they just don't.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on this as you were thinking. I think, like many women, I have taken on the lion's share of emotional labor and the extra work, whether that be in the workplace or at home or whatever. And one of the learnings I've had that makes me feel better about giving less fucks and not stepping in all the time and not doing all of that labor is a realization that I have limited people along the way and enabled people and created codependent relationships, and that there was an actual cost, not just for me, but for the other people I worked with in my life. The example, I always stepped in and made sure things got done on my work teams.
Mhm.
And I limited people's growth opportunity. I limited their accountability. I limited their learning and leadership, or like taking on the lion's share of things at home. I'm actually limiting my partner's ability and capacity to step in as a parent and be a dad and be engaged and make decisions. So I think there are personal costs to us that we get done with. But sometimes, as I think about the earlier years, recognizing that there is a cost to everybody involved, somehow it makes this feeling of wanting to get there faster, of wanting to give zero fucks faster,
Right.
not having to wait till menopause. Something about that triggers that for me. What are your thoughts or reactions?
Well, it's interesting. I got thrown into that point in my life without me unexpectedly. So I had a long time sales career, and I got to the point I just hated it. But financially, it brought in nice money, helped household, my marriage, kids, whatever. When I was 45, I started, and this is kind of typical of a lot of women, maybe not just at this age, but in 40s, 50s, sometimes even 60s. I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I started questioning what I wanted to do. And so it took me a year. I finally decided that I wanted to give that career up and go back to grad school and become a therapist. Was it a big decision? Yeah, major. I had to take out a major student loan. I hadn't been in school in a while. So it wasn't a decision taken lightly. So at 46, I started grad school. And 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks into the program, my husband, 18 years, decided he didn't want to be married anymore and left. So here I am without any financial support from him or emotional support. I've got an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old. All of us are devastated and shocked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And luckily, I think because I was at that point in my life that I finally said, no, I need to do this for me. So when you talk about the costs, yeah, I've got an 11 and 15-year-old at home. And I'm at school and I'm studying, but I'm still trying to take them to hockey and all the other stuff. So that guilt we feel as women starts to come into play. And sometimes that guilt can get so heavy that it prevents us from doing what we really want to do.
Sorry to break in, but this part matters. Rate the show, share it, and support the sponsor so I can keep making episodes worth interrupting you for. Starting a business sure does sound empowering until you're staring at your laptop thinking, what if this doesn't work? What if nobody ever buys? What if I just made a very public, totally mortifying mistake? I've built my business from the ground up, and here's what I know. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's building in the face of it. And that is a lot easier to do when you have the right infrastructure behind you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from brands just getting started to household names. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that actually matches your brand. It's packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. And you can create email and social media campaigns to find your customers without needing to hire a full marketing department. It's time to turn all of those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TIWW. Go to shopify.com/TIWW. Again, that's shopify.com/TIWW.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Baseball is back, and the first pitch is on Netflix. The New York Yankees, led by seven-time All-Star Aaron Judge, head to the San Francisco Bay to take on Rafael Devers' San Francisco Giants. This season kicks off with one exclusive opening night game. Watch MLB Opening Night, the New York Yankees versus the San Francisco Giants, live on Netflix. Wednesday, March 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
I don't know if there's research or data behind this. I wonder how many women are making big changes proactively and purposely, like changing jobs or ending relationships or whatever, or when it happens to them, approaching it differently than they would have 10 or 20 years previously. I'm curious if there is anything out there about that.
Most of the women that I work with and I have spoken to over 15 plus years practicing is that they get to a certain point in their life and they're just done.
Mm-hmm.
They're not happy. So for instance, I've just been working with a client, 46, I think, and not happy where she's been living, want to move to a different state. So then go move. She's like, I can't, I got a good job and and that's the, the stuff we do. And guess what? We worked it out. Still doesn't know really what's going to happen. I don't either. I don't have a crystal ball. Mm, February 1st, she's going to be in her new place in a new state. And she's never been happier. So sometimes we need that little push because our brains have what's called a negativity bias inherently, every human brain. And so when you talk to other people, which we tend to do, especially as women, to get opinions, it's usually negative. So, of course, when I did that, it was, why would you leave a good sales job? Therapists don't make a lot of money. Well, how are you gonna do that with 2 kids at home? It's always a negative comments. Even the head of the grad school program, when he interviewed me for the program, said, "You do realize you're not gonna make as much money in this profession as you did in sales." I said, "Yeah, I'm very well aware of that."
Right. I hear you and completely agree from a personal experience that it's like I'm done not being happy, right? And that does become often the reason. But what's really curious, at least for me personally, is I was the least happy in my entire lifetime in my 20s, but I also
Mm,
did the least about it because I was so focused on proving and pleasing and
mhm,
performing and all the things. So, what I really love about whatever's happening in our brains is that being happy, generally speaking, or not being happy, generally speaking, becomes a good enough reason for us to move, for like
mhm,
us to do or choose or be something different. Where, and
mhm.
again, I know my experience isn't everyone's experience, but all of those things existed in my 20s, but I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because that is very true. Is when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're too scared to make those changes. But then we reach a certain point in life, and I do believe it has a lot to do with the hormonal changes going on, as well as just reaching that a certain point in life.
Mhm.
I mean, men go through a period of midlife changes too,
Right.
just not to the degree that we do. But the risks become greater, but more women tend to take more risks in midlife than they do in their 20s and 30s.
Okay, so aging out of fuck seems like all upside to me, but I know that that's not the case. So let's talk about some of the potential challenges or downsides. First, the backlash can and might be really real for some people, whether it's people like going, "Are you okay?" or deciding that you're difficult, or changing and shifting relationships or ending relationships.
Mhm.
Talk to us about how to navigate or move through some of that backlash.
Yeah, when I talk about, making the changes, I'm not talking about, blowing up your whole life. You know, if you haven't been happy in your marriage for 30 years, okay, yeah, maybe you need to leave it. But I'm not talking about going to that extreme. Um, but at least starting to expand your life outside of that and looking for other opportunities. Most women right now in their 60s are majority are forming their own companies. And if you look at the women on Substack, many women, 70s, 80s, they're writing books. They're doing all sorts of things. They're saying, I don't care what people say, yeah, I'm old, but I still have other stuff I need to get done. It's really important to try to maintain what's right for you. I'm
Mhm.
not suggesting everybody go and, change their career if they're not happy or plus you've got other constraints from society. Right now, I talk to a lot of women, unfortunately, that are in their 50s. They're being pushed out of corporate America. And to some degree, the good and the bad is just forcing them to now say, okay, well, I hated that job anyway. So now what do I want to do?
Yeah. Again, anecdotal, but my mom a couple years ago got divorced after 50 years of marriage. I should say my parents got divorced after 50 years of marriage, but and people are often like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, it was a long time coming. The difference from my perspective is that my mom finally was like, "I can't do it anymore." nothing actually changed or was different or whatever, other than I think, and again, I'm with you. We're not encouraging everybody to go get divorced or leave companies or make radical changes. It's just curious how this sort of perfect storm happens with perimenopause and neuroscience and all of that. So, a kind of offshoot of that question is, how do you help women separate legitimate feedback
Hmm.
from social punishment? I know there are times where I am, in fact, being difficult. I also know that there are times where society deems me too difficult for breathing. How do I tell the difference?
Sometimes we don't. So it's an issue of, do I want to be my true self, or do I want what persona do I want to continually put out into the world? So yeah, when we're at work, there is a certain persona we have to put out into the world. But I can't even tell you how many jobs I've been fired from opening my mouth, just making suggestions. Either, I'm not a team player, or I talk too much, I ask too many questions. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Didn't work for me. Now, if I had a different personality, yeah, maybe I could have tempered it a little bit more. I could have found ways to deal with it. But it's really comes down to your authentic self. Who are you really?
Mhm.
Now, if you have to play that role in corporate America because just the way it is, okay, then play that role if that means your livelihood. But that doesn't mean outside of work you can't be your true self. And that's where women tend to stop. They'll do it at work. They'll put up with everything they have to do, maybe put up with spouse behavior, whatever, but they don't do anything for themselves. And so my suggestion is, be curious, no matter what age you are. Just be curious. And by that I mean, see what opportunities there are. We think we know everything. We don't know everything. And do some research. Go figure it out. One of my clients yesterday just told me she's quitting her job at a major bank. She hates it, and her dream was always to get a food truck.
It's awesome.
Say,
Yeah.
it's like, go for it.
Right.
But again, it also comes down to your for risk reward and what kind of tolerance you have for that. So 5 years ago, I moved to Florida because I got tired of the Chicago winters. And I said to my kids that are adults, grown, I said, Mom's moving to her happy place. If you want to come see me, fly to Florida. And I took off and I left.
Yeah.
Of course, again, I heard all the negative from friends. What happens if you don't like the weather? Well, but you don't know anybody there. I mean, there wasn't one positive statement. There wasn't one person that said, that sounds awesome. Go for it.
Yeah. It's interesting. It is really that negative bias, right? That you talk about. We see all the potential things that could go wrong. I often ask myself, like, what's the worst that could happen? Because that's what my brain defaults to, anyways. But then
Huh?
I force myself to ask, what's the best that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, more often than not, it's somewhere in the middle, what actually happens,
Mm-hmm.
but often leans a little bit more towards the best that could happen. And to your point, like, okay, let's say you move to Florida, you don't actually like it being hot all year round and you don't meet anybody you like, well, then you just move again. I mean,
That's what I
not
said.
oversimplifying, but
I said, I don't like it. I'll move back. It's
yeah,
not like it was a one-way ticket. It's like I can do whatever I want. But
yeah.
a lot of people don't think about that in terms of leading their life. Just like this young woman who's moving to a different state. Something doesn't work out, so she'll figure it out.
Mhm.
We always seem as women to figure it out.
If we look back at all of our challenges and obstacles and all the things that have happened in our life, the reality is we have a 100% track record of figuring it out. Why? Because we're still here. And I
Mhm.
always like to think about that. Like, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I trust myself to figure it out, because that I've done and women are doing everywhere we look.
Mhm.
Ellen, my last question is, obviously, I have a lean towards loving this idea of aging out of fucks. I'm super excited about it. My last question for anybody who's listening who might be in their 20s or their 30s is there any way to speed this up? Is there a way to let go of care less about everyone and everything else? Or do we actually have to wait till perimenopause and menopause for it to happen?
I don't think we have to necessarily wait for perimenopause or menopause, but I think it's extremely difficult to do it when you're younger because our brain is operating differently. We're young, we don't have as much experience. There is more fear involved. There's a lot of other things, but can you temper some of it? Can you manage the people pleasing? Can you manage not giving in and being everybody's emotional sounding board? Can you set boundaries? Can you do those other things? And yes, you can. But we're never taught. We're never taught how to do that. And that's part of what I do in therapy is with cognitive distortions is how do you undo that? There's a reason you're people pleasing. It doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Okay.
Right.
So why is it happening and how can you change it?
Well, I'm sure people want to learn more of how to do that. So I want to remind our listener that you have a Substack called Life Branches, and Ellen also has a website, lifebranches.com. We're going to put the links to both in show notes, as well as any other way to follow Ellen that we have. Ellen, thank you for writing this article. I'm so grateful it found me, and thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure was all mine. All right, friend, aging out of fucks isn't decline. It's development. It's your nervous system choosing honesty over harmony. It's biology backing up when your mouth finally says what your soul has known for years. So if you're being labeled too much or difficult or not like you used to be, well then good, because you're not here to be palatable. You're here to be you. And the version of you that's emerging now, she's unapologetic and undeniable, and infinitely more interesting than the version who spent all of her energy pleasing, performing, and proving. So trust the shift. Age out of all of the fucks that you no longer want to give. This is Woman's Work.
Pam, are you here to game with me?
In a minute, Ryan, but first, it's time to share what's happening on the 10 News podcast.
The 10 News is a kids' news podcast for curious 8 to 12-year-olds that even grown-ups can learn from. What else is there to say?
That we cover everything from the Supreme Court and the war in Ukraine to Pokemon and Minecraft, and we'll always tell you 10 things you need to know.
And we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Is it game time now, Pam?
It's game time, Ryan.
Let's go!